If you have just started coming to our church in the last 2 weeks, you're probably wondering who I am. I'm actually the pastor here. So I've been gone for a couple weeks to South Africa. Had a chance to go over and do a lot of different things that you were very supportive of. And this morning what I'm going to be doing is, instead of a normal sermon, I'm going to be sharing with you what happened in South Africa and also how you were a part of that and what you did. Many of you, for weeks and weeks, we had things where you were bringing in all kinds of donations for a lot of sewing equipment, a lot of medical equipment, a lot of toys, all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to show you this morning how you were a big blessing in South Africa and all that went on over there. So I'm not going to be able to tell you anywhere close to everything that happened, but I will try and hit the highlights for you. I will tell you this, on the back of your bulletin, you'll see my name and phone number. If you have a question, I would like you to just text me, okay? I got my phone with me, and if you want to have a question anytime during the thing, at the end of it, I will answer those questions. So feel free to text me, and I'll be checking on those at the end and answer anything you'd like to have. Let me get the two big questions out of the way, because this is what everybody was asking in the first service. Number one, they said, how was the food, and how long was the flight? That's what everybody wanted to know. The food was absolutely incredible. I actually gained quite a bit of weight because I was eating so much. I was having an appetizer, a meal, and a dessert at every meal. And I'm real bad that if food is free, I eat too much of it. That's just the way I am. So I ate like crazy and gained a lot of weight. The flight, I told y'all before I left, pray for me because the flight was like 21 hours. I was wrong. I left McCarran Airport, and from the time I left McCarran until I got where I was staying, going was 42 hours. So I had two really long layovers. We were in the Zurich, Switzerland airport for 8 hours. I never, ever, ever want to see that airport again, ever, never. Coming back was 31 hours. Going over, I slept 3 hours of the 42. Coming back, I slept 2 hours of the 31. And I'll tell you a quick story. This has nothing to do with any ministry. I just thought it was kind of funny. I was coming back on the way back, and we were flying out of Cape Town, South Africa, going to Zurich. And it's like an 11, 12-hour flight. It's in the middle of the night. So I can't sleep on an airplane. So I'm the only person awake on this plane. It's a huge plane. I think there was 256 passengers on this plane. It was massive. And there was only one empty seat on the whole plane, and it was right next to me. I had my own little, it was like, thank you, Lord, for blessing my life. So we're in the middle of the night, and I'm watching a movie. I was watching the new Top Gun movie, and I had these noise-canceling headphones. So if you've ever had those, you can't hear anything. They're great. So I'm sitting there watching my little movie. Everybody's asleep. And the little girl in front of me reaches around by the hand and hits me on the leg. So I take this ear thing off and said, what? She goes, turn your movie down. It's like, how can she hear my movie? I mean, there's no way they're noise-canceling headphones. You can't hear these. So I thought maybe I have it up way too loud or something. She can hear it coming out of the headphones. So I turn it down a little bit. A few minutes later, she hits me again. Turn your movie down. I was like, so I turn it down to where I can barely hear it in my headphones, okay? Like, there's no way she can hear this. Well, all of a sudden, I look up from my movie, and like everybody around me is awake, and they are giving me dirty looks. I mean, it's obvious. I thought, these people are way over there. They cannot hear this movie. There's no way they can hear this movie. So I take my earphones off to see if I can hear what's going on. What happened was I had my iPad, and I set it down in the empty seat next to me, and what must have happened was my finger must have accidentally hit the Angry Birds app. And Angry Birds was blaring out of my iPad all over the airplane, and everyone could hear it except me, because I had on noise-canceling headphones. And so I took the headphones off, and all I hear was, walk, 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 walk. You know? And people were like, I felt so bad. We got to Zurich, and people were getting off the plane looking at me like, we're going to kill you, dude. I was like, I'm really sorry. I don't know how that happened. I never even play Angry Birds. But anyway, so those are two things. But let me get back to the ministry side. I'll tell you what's going on. And we're going to walk through this. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I went over there. Let me tell you how it kind of started. There was a lady here in Las Vegas. She goes to Walk Church. I don't know if y'all have heard of Walk Church. It's way over in Henderson on the southeast side of town. It was a church that got started out of Hope Church. They're like 5 or 6 years old, I think. They meet in the middle school over there on that side of town. And there's a lady there in that church that goes to South Africa all the time and works with this ministry. Well, that lady happened to be our real estate agent and who sold us our house. So when the guy who's the head of the ministry in South Africa came to Las Vegas to visit them, she brought him by the church, he and his wife, to meet me and kind of tell what they did. And we talked for a long time, struck up a good little relationship. So he contacts me about 2 months ago. He says, hey, I'd like for you to see if you would come over to South Africa. We have a big conference called the Move Conference. People come from all over countries in that part of Africa. And he said, I'd like for you to be one of the main speakers at the sessions, and then also do like some breakout sessions and things like that. I said, sure, I'd be glad to. So he said, if you want to, you can do that, then you can fly back to Vegas, or you can stay longer and see what our ministry's all about. So I thought, well, I want to see what their ministry's all about. So it was 2 weeks that I was over there in South Africa, and after the conference was over, we got to begin the ministry. So I won't tell you about the conference. The conference was basically what you deal with every Sunday morning, listening to me preach. That was it. And so I also got to deal a lot. I got over there, and it turned into, they asked me to meet with some people that are younger people who are going on missions, to talk about leadership, Christian leadership. So I did some of those kind of things also as well, and it was a lot of fun. But when I started looking at the ministry, I want to kind of explain this to you. It's kind of hard to explain it, so I'll try to give you a brief thing, because I really want you to see how you were involved. That's what I really want you to see, is how you made a difference in this world. The guy who's the head of this, his name is Kun. It's really hard to pronounce, but it's pronounced Kun. And he's from South Africa, and he and his wife, and they started this ministry in thinking that, you know what, one of the things that they've seen in missions is it's not working like it should. They realized that if you were going out and just telling people about Jesus, people weren't coming to Christ. He said what they realized was they had to help people rise above where they were in life, so that they would listen to what you had to say. And it wasn't even just enough to go and like give them something and go, here's some food, or here's some money. Because what that happens is, many of y'all know this, if you go to somebody and you give them some food that lasts for a week, you know what happens at the end of the week? They're hungry again. It's very temporal. So he said, I need to find some way to help these people to have a more lasting sustenance, and they would also listen to the gospel. Because over in South Africa, the unemployment rate is right around 38 to 40%. But most of the people who are employed in the black community, even though they're employed, they make next to nothing. Let me give you a quick history lesson. Some of y'all may have heard about this. South Africa is known for apartheid. Apartheid, if you don't know what apartheid is, it was basically our version of segregation. And this was interesting when over there were blacks, there were whites, and there were coloreds. And coloreds were anybody who were of any mixed race. They called them coloreds. Which, by the way, this is another dumb thing. This is like the airplane thing. I was such an idiot. I was trying to be, careful. I didn't want to offend anybody. And so I asked them, there was a black person, and I called the black person. I said, what about the African American? Y'all see the problem? Yeah, they're not American. And they looked at me and they go, they're not American, they're just African. I was like, that was stupid. I was like, yeah, okay. So, but the black community before apartheid, it was just like our segregation. They were not allowed to go into white restaurants, to white bathrooms, just like ours. But the problem is when we had segregation, there was still a lot in the black community here in America who they made a good living, they had good families, they had a good life. They just couldn't go in certain places. The problem in South Africa was the blacks couldn't go in all those places with whites, but they were in abject poverty. Not American poverty. It's a different level of poverty. If you've never been in those kind of places in the world, you can't fathom this kind of poverty that they lived in. So apartheid goes away. Nelson Mandela comes along, and apartheid is gone. So now the black community can go in where the whites and the coloreds could go and have the freedom to go in there, but the problem was they're still poor. And so many of them just continued in abject poverty to this day. And so this guy that started this ministry said, we've got to do something to help these people get out of poverty to find some new form of life where they can make a living of some sort. And by doing that, we'll be able to share the gospel with them. But he also does an interesting thing. He brings in people who want to be missionaries, and he trains them. He puts them in these positions where he trains them to do the same thing, go to other countries and replicate the system. And what it's all based on is business. This man was a businessman, and he said what we need to do is find a way to give people skills or a business acumen so they can go out and either have a skill or a trade, or they can have business sense to start their own business and make a living. And so that's what he does. It's called ethnos ministry. Now I'm going to tell you just a few of the things they do, and hopefully this will kind of start making sense to you, and I'll show you how you fit into this. I'll give you an example. This picture right here. This picture was in a very bad part of town. It was a building that had not been rented for a long, long time. It was very, very bad condition. But the guy who owned it was willing to rent it to Ethnos Ministry. And what they did was they fixed it up and made it into a really nice little cafe, coffee shop kind of place. And so they opened it up to everybody in the community. Is more than welcome to come in. And people come in a lot who have nothing, or they just need somebody to talk to, somebody to pray with them, someone to be there for them. And so they use it as a ministry hub to the community, but what they also do is they bring people in there to work in the cafe. And they learn how to run a coffee shop, or they learn how to run a restaurant. They learn the business skills to do that, so they now have a skill they never had before, and they can go out and do that again. They can just have their own business. And so it's really fascinating how they use that. And they would also have missionary people want to go be missionaries who they would learn this, who they say they may go out to be a businessman, because there's certain countries, you may not know this, there's certain countries you cannot go into unless you have a really, really, really good reason to be there. It's not like our country where everybody just comes in. You have to be there, and they watch you very closely. And so they want to make sure that you're a business person who's making money, who's paying taxes. That's a big one. So there was one guy in here, he was running the cafe. It was really interesting. He and his wife are running this coffee shop. They're about to go to Nepal, and he is going to be a water buffalo milk farmer. Yeah. And I asked him, I said, what do you know about milking water buffaloes? He said, I don't know anything about it. He said, I've never seen a water buffalo. He said, but he's learning the business skills. He's going to go over that because one of the biggest needs in Nepal is there's a massive, massive milk shortage. And so they need people to come in and start a business as a milk farmer. So he's found somebody over there, got the equipment, but he's learned all the business skills here. He's going to take it out. So they're helping locals do that and missionaries. So this is one of the ways they do it, was through this. This is the one I want to talk about for just a minute, because this is where so many of y'all had a big impact. These ladies right here, I'm going to tell you, I sort of didn't tell you the truth, but it was on accident. I told you the truth, just not the whole truth. If some of y'all remember, I said, hey, we need some of y'all to bring sewing materials, and like needles and scissors, and some of y'all brought, I said, I also need y'all to bring like different kinds of jewelry that need to be put together. And I said there were ladies over there that were poor who were going to put these things together and sell them to make their own business, which were these ladies. And what they do is once they learn the skills of how to do a business, how to make things, they can sell them to local boutiques or stores, or many of them are going to go out and start their own business. So I thought that's what I told y'all, because I didn't know the whole truth. When I got there, these ladies were all former prostitutes, and they're all deaf. And when you're a deaf person in South Africa, here we have compassion on deaf people. There, they're seen as a burden because they bring nothing to the family. They're just nothing but another mouth to feed, and they can't do anything to help. So they're outcast by their family and by society. And because they have no skills, they have no education, they have no ability to communicate, the only thing these ladies could do to find a way to have any kind of food was to prostitute themselves. They didn't want to, obviously, they hated it, but there's nothing else they knew to do except to prostitute themselves just so they could eat. And some of them had children they were trying to feed. So when those y'all who said the things you brought were sewing materials, or you brought little things to make necklaces or earrings, these are the ladies that were doing it. As a thing called a zaria. And so they made all kinds of things. I brought some to show you what they were doing. This is one of the things, they gave this one to me because I kept saying I liked it. It's a little keychain with a little dog on it. And they made next Sunday, I thought I'd have it with me today, but I've got to get it from the lady that was on our trip. She had it in her suitcase. I got a bunch of things about this size that they were making that were Christmas ornaments. And so I bought a bunch of them. So if y'all would like to buy one next week, I won't make any profit. But if you don't buy them, I've got a lot of Christmas ornaments. so we're going to bring those next week. I'm going to save this. I got to tell you this. I'll tell you this last. This was also, they were making these little Christmas stockings. And they were embroidering names on them. And they actually had gotten over 1,000 orders from local shops. And they could customize with names. So I got 3 of them. 2 for my dogs, Lucy and Millie, and 1 for my cat, Kitty. So we thought they need their own stockings, so I got those for them. So they were making things like that. They were making like personalized like towels or all kinds of stuff like that, anything they could do to sell. But I want to tell you about this one. If you look at this, I'll walk down. People watching the live stream are going to go, where'd he go? Just so you can see it better because it's so small. It's a very, very simple little beaded bracelet, about as simple as you can get, something that you would probably say your kids would make at school in the 2nd or 3rd grade and bring home to you for Mother's Day. This was made by a young lady. She was a prostitute or had been in prostitution. They brought her out. They found her on the streets and brought her into this. But her mental capacity was maybe 1st or 2nd grade at the best. So the sewing, they had these sewing machines and embroidery machines. She couldn't do any of that. That was way too much for her. They found out the only thing she could do was to take these little beads that some of y'all bought. They get the little wire, and she would string beads all day. And this is all she could sell. And so we bought every single one she made. And she lit up like a Christmas tree. She was so excited that somebody wanted her stuff. And so they were making things like this, and this is one I got from my daughter. This is hers. But hopefully, if Walk Church doesn't take all of them, I fussed at them. I said, y'all better give me some. I'm hopefully going to have some of these next week. If you'd like to buy them, they're like 10 cents. So if we gave her a lot more. I know you're going, you only gave her 10 cents? No, we gave her a lot more than that. So she was trying to sell them for like next to nothing. So that's what these ladies were doing. Now this was on the upper floor of this building, and down below this, they had some other women that were working that, first I'm going to tell you, there's a side door over to the right of where I was standing. There were ladies in there who were making these beautiful sheepskin house shoes, slippers. They asked me not to take a picture of them because a lot of them had just come off the streets, and a lot of these women had a really problem with men, as you can imagine. They were scared of men, and so they were like, be careful about looking at them. They definitely didn't want you taking their picture in there. And because these women, one thing in South Africa that was so sad, spousal abuse is kind of accepted among the poor people. The husbands could beat their wives and no one would think twice about it. And so they beat their kids too, like very, very violent beatings of kids. And nobody said anything about it. So these women had been abused sexually, mentally, physically, you name it. And so we had to be careful. But there were women who were making slippers in another room. And then down on the bottom floor of this building, there were some people that they had some men who they had trained how to do woodworking. And in the woodworking, these guys learned the skill of woodworking. They started building furniture. And they would build the furniture, bring it to this building, and the women would do the upholstering. And then they'd sell the furniture. So these were people who had no skills, no nothing, but this ministry was teaching them how to do themselves. And what was really interesting too, and some of y'all may think this is harsh, but I thought it was good, they wouldn't let them just stay in this forever. They said, your goal is to move on and take care of yourself. We want you to take care, have dreams. And these women, their backgrounds and stories were just heartbreaking. But their dreams now are huge. And every single one of them, when they told us what their dream was all about serving other people. It was always about doing something that would help someone else. And so it was just an amazing thing to watch. But anyway, so that was a thing called Azaria, was the name of that ministry. There's a wonderful lady named Anna Lee who runs that for them and does that to help them. Remember the name Anna Lee, because she's going to come back at the end of this, and I'm going to tell you something that it was like the wildest part of the whole trip involved Anna Lee. So we'll tell you about her in just a minute. The people, though, as they were coming in, again, I won't be able to tell you all the businesses they were helping people do and all the skills and training, but all of them were for a purpose of helping them get out of poverty and do this. Now, this is a house that they were building, and beautiful home, big house. And the guy who runs the ministry had some background in contracting work. And so in South Africa, there's a lot of very, very wealthy Europeans who move there and retire, because you can retire there really comfortably and really well for not very much. To give you an example, this city was called George. George overlooks the Indian Ocean, and it's on these giant cliffs. If you've ever been to Malibu, some of y'all been to Malibu, this was 10 times prettier than Malibu, but it looked like that. Most beautiful beaches I've ever seen. The cliffs looked like something that wasn't even real. And there was a house that was on one of the cliff sides that was overlooking this gorgeous beach with these beautiful rocks. You could see whales. The whales would pop up in the water. You could see them blowing. You're watching whales and dolphins and everything. And this house was just massive. I mean, beautiful home. It was for sale. So I started Googling, see how much it was. Looked up, it was 4 million rand, which is their currency, rand. So I did the calculations and thought, well, how much is 4 million rand in American dollars? I could have bought that house for about $250,000. Yeah, that's how strong the dollar is compared to the rand. Went past a car dealership. They had a Mercedes-Benz that had low miles on it. It was one of the higher-end Mercedes that go for around $115,000 here. It was selling at $7,000. So, but that was beyond. I told them how much rand. I converted it for them. I told them how much money you could make starting at Target or McDonald's or something like that. And the girl looked at me and she goes, "I didn't know McDonald's workers were so rich." And because if you make $12 an hour there, you're making bank, you know. But they go, "Man, everybody's rich there." I said, "No, you don't understand how much it costs to live in the United States." So they were just amazed by all that kind of stuff. But these are the kind of houses they were building, and they were taking these guys who were poor, had no skills, and they were teaching them framing, plumbing, electrical work, concrete, everything. And they would use their skills. They had retired guys who were contractors who were over the site, and they would walk them through and teach them how to build a house. And it was good for the buyer because the buyer was paying a lot lower cost because of the labor. And so everybody was winning in this whole thing. And when it's over, these guys had skills where they could go out and either work for a contractor or at least be a day laborer and begin to have a life. And so it was a really amazing thing of how they were teaching them skills. In the process, they were sharing the gospel and leading these people to Christ. And many people were coming to Christ because, as you can imagine, a guy gives you a job when you're in abject poverty, you'll listen to what they say. If they want to share, now not all of them got saved for sure, but they were listening and coming to the Lord. This is where a lot of these people lived. This was the slums of there in South Africa in George. It was pitiful. There were some of the areas that amazingly the worst part of the whole town was called Golden Valley. And I thought, when you heard Golden Valley, you thought, boy, this is going to be beautiful. No, this is where the poorest of the poor lived. And a lot of these people, what they would do is they would have a cinder block house that most of them were probably around like a 8 by 10 was about it, and just had a door. And then behind the house, they would have a small piece of like a backyard sort of. They would rent out space in the backyard, and they would have 7 or 8 houses or shacks. And some of these things were only like 4 foot by 4 foot or 5 foot by 5 foot. And they were made out of whatever junk they could find to prop together a makeshift shelter. And that's what they were living in. And so it was absolutely terrible. The people that, because the unemployment rate was so high, of course, they had no way of getting income except through the government. And the government gives them, if they're on that level, they would give them 400 rand per month, which is about $21, is what they had to live on. And so because they were, I know some people go, well, they should use that $21 as best they can. When you're in that situation, you're so hopeless and depressed, what most of them would use their money on were cheap drugs. And there was a drug they would sell there, and they said almost all the men, at least 95% of the men in this community were on drugs. They said most of the kids got hooked on drugs at around 8 years old. There was a lot of alcohol abuse, just the cheapest, nastiest alcohol that, couldn't be good for them. I mean, not that alcohol is good for you, but you know what I mean, it's bad stuff. So it was just a depressing atmosphere that they were living in. And so they're trying to help these people come out of that and be able to find a life that will help them sustain. And they weren't giving them anything. They were teaching them and training them to do something to help them with their life. And they're just very, very grateful. So, but that's kind of where they lived. Interestingly enough, this was the slum area, but the other parts of the city we were in, the city was about 300,000 people. And as we were driving in on the main road through town, I drove it every single day, there were houses that looked like you were in Summerlin. I mean, these were like beautiful. The really nice houses in Summerlin that are super expensive, that's what they looked like. They had these beautiful manicured yards, and everything was just gorgeous. And then you cross the highway, and there was be a row of really, really nice houses you could see. And I told him, boy, those are nice houses. The girl that was driving the car for me, she said, you want to see something? I said, yeah. We turned, and there's this big brown house that was 2-story. If it was in Vegas, it'd probably be about $1 million home. It was a very big, beautiful home. But when you turned in and past the house, like 2 blocks away, was the slums. And what had happened was the government, in order to get the tourists to not see the slums, would give a lot of perks to people that build their big houses right there to block the slums off. So the tourists would never see it, because they had a lot of tourists in this area because the beaches were beautiful and everything else. So it was really unusual, to say the least, about how things were. This is for those of y'all who a lot of y'all gave supplies for medical supplies. All kinds of different medical supplies. You're going, what's that going to? It was going to this right here. This is a ministry called Doors of Hope. And what they did was they found 3 South African doctors, and then there's 3 nurses as well. One of these nurses is a missionary. Her and her husband are missionaries. And what they found is that there is, in a really bad part of town, which this is connected to a church I'm going to show you in just a minute. This is in a really bad part of town, and a lot of the people who live in this area are refugees. A lot of these are refugees from Somalia or from the Middle East, and many of them are Muslim. And so the problem with that in the Muslim community is a Muslim woman will not let a man touch her or get close to her, so they will not go to a doctor. And most of the doctors there in George were men, and so they just wouldn't go to the doctor. Plus, they couldn't afford it anyway. So these doctors and nurses decided to start this ministry called Doors of Hope. It's located back in this building. And they see these women. They come in. They get free health care. Somebody just purchased them an ultrasound machine, so they're able to check for all these illnesses they have, because they have a lot of illnesses. And the Muslim women will let them examine them because it's their woman. And in doing so, they're so grateful, because they can't afford medical care anyway, that they are able to share the gospel. And they're also taking some of these poor people, and they can't obviously train them to be a nurse. They have to go to school for that like they do here. But they can train them to be like a medical office assistant, a medical assistant. So they're building a skill that they can go out and use again. They also had some kids that were there, some younger people who are going on the mission field. They want to do medical missions. So they were able to learn a lot there, and by going into that building. This was a daycare center that was in the building right next to the building you just saw, part of this church we were at. I'll show you the church in a minute. It's the one I preached in last Sunday. This daycare center is located right next door to the witch doctor. And it's creepy. I mean, this dude is creepy, okay? There's a lot of wild religious beliefs that are in that part of Africa. Voodoo was a thing they were kind of into, and this witch doctor was a big deal. So this little daycare is right next to the witch doctor, which is also the church. And they intentionally planted the church in this area because they knew there was no Christian influence whatsoever. What's funny is in America, when churches want to go plant a new church to start one, they tend to go to the richest areas of town and start one. That's what's kind of interesting. It's amazing how that always happens. They went to the place where there was a tremendous amount of poverty and lostness and started this church here. So this daycare was originally started because there were some people that were a part of this ethnos ministry I told you about, the big ministry that had some children. There were 6 children, and they needed daycare during the day, childcare, while they were out doing ministry. And so they said, well, we'll start this daycare for the workers. That was the whole intent. Well, word got out. It turns out a lot of daycares there, the workers don't really care too much about the kids. The daycares, a lot of times, their only goal is to make sure the child is still alive when the parent comes to get them. Sounds like ours, huh? No, just kidding. They were just like, whatever. They don't teach them anything. They don't love on them. They feed them lunch, wait for their mom to come get them. Well, this one, daycare, of course, they were very engaged with the children. There's good, godly Christian women who run the daycare. So they would love the kids. They would teach them all kinds of their ABCs and their letters. They would do Bible stories. They would teach them how to read, all these kind of things. And word got out. So women start showing up with kids going, can I let my child come here? They're like, well, this is just for these people. But they said, sure. So now I think they have like 42 kids the day we were there. A lot of these people there's no way they could afford a daycare users. They're at a very reduced rate. A lot of these kids, their parents lose their jobs, but this daycare says, don't worry about it. We're not going to kick you out. We're going to keep loving your kid, and the ethnos ministry keeps paying for that. And so some of y'all brought toys, and some of y'all brought things like hygiene stuff and everything else. Those toys and everything went to this ministry here. It was to help these kids. And almost all these kids come from a family that's not a Christian family at all. They've never heard the gospel. And this family's being introduced to Jesus, being introduced to the family through this daycare. And those kids, now you talk about well-behaved. There was this one worker, which one? Okay, see the one with the blue bandana up there? That woman loves Jesus, but she scared me half to death. Because when she would pop her hands and go, children, I was like, yeah. Those kids immediately, they stopped. And she'd go, we are not going to act that way. And they didn't. It's like, but she loved them. And those kids were so wonderful, and they were so much fun. They were so thrilled to have us there. We were there, this day we were there for about 3 or 4 hours, doing a lot of things with them. This will show you the lady there with her hands up with the red sweater. She's a member at Walk Church, and the other 3 also go to Walk Church. And so they were doing they have a children's ministry background, so they were doing a lot of stuff with the kids, teaching them Bible stories and things like that. But these kids, again, most of them come from very bad home lives. Some of them have very abusive fathers and things like that. But this church is doing amazing ministry to them. They're just about completely packed out about how many they can hold. But anyways, that's the ministry they will do there. This is the church where I was at last Sunday. This church is the one that has the daycare and has the medical facility. And this was right before church started. There's this part of the church, then back to my left shoulder, there's about another section about that size. So it's really great congregation. It felt like you were in our church, to be honest with you. It had the same kind of feel as our church. It was really a great time. They were kind of like y'all are a lot of times, where you have to go, y'all need to be quiet, we got to get started. You know, y'all like to talk a lot, which is great. They're the same way. They love to talk. They love each other. And it was just a wonderful place to be, and I enjoyed being a part of there and being able to preach as well. This, though, is something I wanted to show you. The people here in the semicircle are all deaf. They don't have anywhere to go, obviously, for church. They don't have any church background, because if they went to a church, they couldn't hear anything. There was nothing for them. There never has been anything for them. And this church decided to reach out to deaf people. Now, here's what's interesting. This kind of floored me. What most churches here in the United States do, everyone I've ever seen, if they want to reach deaf people, they find somebody who knows sign language. Then they put them in a certain part of the sanctuary, and if you're deaf, you go sit over there and watch them sign. And that's your involvement in the church. What this church did, this still amazes me, they have a large number of people in the church who said, we will come during the week and learn sign language so that when they come to church, they're not over there, they're just a part of us. And these people are all learning sign language so that when they come to church, they can talk to these people and communicate with these people through sign language. And we were, during the service, we got to the second and third song in the worship time, and all the songs, there was a lady that pops up on the screen, and they have the music, it was a video, and it was a praise and worship song like we sing here, but she was signing it. And so they were part of the service, and they told all the rest of us, if you don't know sign language, try and keep up, you know? And so the whole congregation is doing sign language with them. So they weren't over there, they were part of the congregation. And they felt very, very valued and very loved and very cared for. I thought it was amazing that the church was willing to do that. So many of them were willing to learn sign language, to love these people. And they were all starting to come in. And by the way, I'll tell you this, I made an executive decision without asking y'all. And technically, I'm supposed to do this with your permission, but I didn't. The people here, the deaf people, and also the ladies you saw that were in the sewing group and everything, they have no transportation. And so the only way they can get to their jobs or get to church or wherever they go, there's people in the congregation who, if they're available, will take their little car and pick them up and get them there. But if they're not available, they can't, so they're not able to go. And so one of the people in Ethnos Ministries came to me and they said, Ben, there's a 15-passenger van, and we almost have enough money to buy it. If we got it, then we could transport these people a lot easier and everywhere. And they said, we just need $2,000 more to buy it. They showed me the van was on a lot. So I said, Spring Valley will do it. So I said, we'll give $2,000. So we're going to get that money to them. They're going to buy the van, and they'll have that to be able to help these people. I told them, I said, when I get home, I'll talk to the church. If y'all need 2 vans, us and Walk are working together to see if we can help them out. So just a tremendous, tremendous blessing of what they're doing. So let me tell you one more thing I want you to hear about, and then I'll see if you have any questions from my phone. There was one night that, if you remember, I told you there was a lady named Annalise that was running the sewing ministry to the deaf. She told us that, she said, I want to have your whole team over to my house for a traditional South African meal. And she said, and then we're going to go do some ministry. The word ministry, I found out, is very broad. Okay? I said, okay. So, and I've done it. I've been all over the world. I've done some pretty weird, different stuff. Nothing really shocks me. Nothing scares me. Nothing bothers me. So I was like, ministry sounds great. I'm not nervous a bit. So we eat this traditional South African dish, and we get in this room, and she breaks this half of the group up. She said, y'all are going to go down to this one part of town, and you're going to do this. Okay? That wasn't my group. She says, Pastor Ben, you and the others are going to go with these people, and I'm going to be with you, and your job will be security. And I said, security from what? She said, well, every Wednesday we go down into the industrial park. And after all the businesses close, there's a parking lot down there. And she said, this area of town is not safe, but it's where all the prostitutes go to do business. And people come. And she said, you'll be security from their pimps. I said, first of all, that's not ministry. Okay? We have a different version of ministry. Yeah? And I go, oh, really? And she said, yes. She said, last week, we do this every Wednesday, and last week some of the pimps showed up, and 2 of them got very angry about what was going on, and one pulled out a machete. And I said, in America, we call a machete a big, long knife. What do you call it? She was a big, long knife. And I was like, well, okay, just as long as we're on the same page here. And she said, we'll just need you. She said, the ladies will not talk to you. They will be, you need to stand far away from them, but we need you on the perimeter for security when the pimps show up. And I'm like, Lord, if you've ever wanted to do the rapture, this would be a great time. You know? So we get down there, and sure enough, I mean, it was sketchy. It was dark, the sun was just going down, and they set this table up, and they had coffee and little desserts that they were going to have for the ladies. And then she got this unbelievably bright light. I've never seen a brighter light in my life. And she turned it on underneath the table, and it just kind of beamed down the streets. And the ladies knew when they saw the beam that they were there, and they would start coming. And so over about a 20-minute period, prostitutes just start showing up. And the prostitutes called this their church. They were coming to church. And again, you probably think, well, they shouldn't be prostitutes. This is all they had, all they knew. They weren't trying to clean them up before they came to Jesus. They were trying to bring them to Jesus where they were. So we pull up, and I look over, and there are these two guys, and they were two of the pimps. And they were watching what we were doing. And Annalise, she says, she grabs one guy, Chris, and this other guy who was South African. She said, Chris, and I forgot his name. She said, y'all go over there and talk to them. And I said, I'll stay over here and pray. You know? And so they go over and take them some coffee and start talking to them. So I'm standing there looking around in the security, and Annalise goes, Pastor Ben, I need you to come with me. I said, where are we going? She said, we're going to walk up the street here about 5 or 6 blocks. She said, there's a young girl up there who is scared to come down because of her pimp. And I want us to go up there, and I want you to talk to the pimp, and I'll see if we can get her to come. Now, guys, I've watched some movies, and I know what pimps look like, you know. And I had this image of what a pimp looked like from the movies. Well, we get up there, and the girl and the pimp are sitting on the sidewalk, and this pimp would look like he was about 20 years old. He was 120 pounds soaking wet, and looked like his clothes looked like he got him out of the garbage. He was very poor, you could tell. And he was kind of looking, you know, and I was looking for a machete, you know. So I thought if he didn't have a machete, I'm more than big enough to take him, you know. But as long as like he ain't got a weapon, I'm okay. So she stands up with Annalise, and he stands up with me, and I didn't know what to do. And so I just did what came naturally, and I stuck my hand out. And I said, hey, my name is Ben. And he just, like this. And I thought, oh no, I have done some cultural thing I did not know about and just offended him, and here comes the machete, you know. And he just looked at me. And this big smile came across his face, and he shook my hand and told me his name, which I found out later. Annalise said that to him, he was shocked that an elder, he looked at me as an older man, old enough to be his father, would show him that much respect. He'd never seen that before. So that was a God thing. I just did that. And so I said, hey, she told the girl, she said, let's walk down here together, and we have some coffee, and we're going to meet. And she said, she kind of looked at him, she said, okay. And I looked at him and said, why don't you come with me, and we'll go down there too, and we'll get some coffee. And he just lit up, because somebody was showing him kindness. And again, I didn't know all that. I wasn't trying to be like, look at me, the pastor. I was doing what we do here. But that was so unusual in his life. And so we walked down there, and by the time I got down there, there were 8 pimps who'd shown up. And the first two he came to, that Chris and the other guy went to, were on their knees with Chris and the South African guy praying and weeping. And they sat there for the whole time we were there, and we told them about Jesus. And we prayed with these guys. And we just showed them kindness and respect. And it was really an amazing time. And eventually we got, the ladies were over here. They were praying with the girls. They would sing worship songs with them. It was like they were having their own little church service. And they shared devotion with them. And they got ready. All of a sudden they go, we've got to go. And they were hugging each other. And I told Annalise, I said, well, we can stay longer if we need to. She says, no, we've got to go now. Because what happens in South Africa is they have what's called load sharing. And different parts of South Africa at certain times, all the power goes off to conserve energy. And so all the street lights, the only things that work are the traffic lights, nothing else. It's pitch black. And we're in this bad part of town. She said, we do not want to be here when the street lights go out. It's very dangerous. So we were packing stuff up and got everything to go. And those girls were so grateful and hugged those girls. And those men came by, and you could tell they didn't know what to do with us. And so we would shake their hand. And the guy that I talked to, his name was Roberto, and I just put my arm around him. And I said, let me pray for you, buddy. And I mean, it was huge to him. And so this is what ethnos, and this was not like they did this because the Americans came. These people do this every Wednesday night. They go down there, and they know all these girls by name. And they love them, and many of them, what they do, once they build that relationship, they pull them out of that into that sewing ministry. And they get them out of that lifestyle. And they help them find a new life. So it's really amazing. And like I said, I only showed you a few of the businesses they did. The other ones, they did several other things. They were really incredible that taught them skills and got them a living. But it was a blessing. And I'm really grateful for all that y'all did, because the people there, you don't realize, you've never been to those kind of countries that are have third world poverty. They think America is amazing. I mean, you can't imagine what they think about Americans. It's like, y'all are Americans. It's incredible. And they were amazed that a bunch of Americans at a church, they all heard of Las Vegas. Everybody knows Las Vegas everywhere in the world. They all knew Las Vegas. They go, oh, there's a church in Las Vegas that bought all this stuff for us. And they were so many, and they said, please tell those people thank you. Please tell them thank you. It meant the world to them. So you made a big difference in those people's lives. Some people have asked, are we going to do any further work with them, any further partnering? I'm still looking at that right now. I don't like to make emotional decisions at all like that. I'm still talking to the guy in charge. We're going to look at some of the things, because what I look for when we partner with the church, I've done this with other churches around the world. I look at the people involved, and are they solid believers? Do they believe the same things we believe about the Bible and about salvation and Jesus? Are they solid? The second thing I look at is what process do they use? Do they have a good plan in place that is rock solid? Because some people get in ministry or missions, and they have a good heart, but they don't have a good plan, and the whole thing falls apart because they just aren't prepared. And then the last thing I look for is, are they being productive? Is the kingdom growing? Are lives being changed? And so once we look at those things, those are the kind of things I would want our church to look at before we ever decide to partner. But we may do that. And if we do, then we may take a group to South Africa, and y'all can be a part of what goes on there. So let me see if anybody asked a question. If not, we're going to have an early supper, early lunch. Or I guess we won't, because it's already past time. Okay. Question was asked, would our church be able to support this ministry financially? Yes, we will be able to support this ministry financially if that's what we choose to do. And that's where I was talking about. I'm going to look and see if this is where I feel God is leading us to do this. For those of y'all who don't know, we actually have money in our budget that we budget just for these kind of things. Whatever our church wants to support, we can do that. We actually had a ministry we were supporting for numerous years. That partnership, we no longer have that partnership because they don't need us anymore. So now there's a lot of money freed up, so we can do that. And I am looking at different partnerships, so we may be able to do this with them. How can we continue to support this wonderful ministry from afar? That would be the big thing. Is there's two ways actually. One of them is, of course, financially, but there was also a thing that some of these girls. There was one girl in particular that stuck out to me. Her name is Erin, and she is from South Africa, brought up out of poverty, and she's wanting a better life, and she wants to do something in the business world. And so Ethnos has been helping her, but they said Ethnos says what would be good for her to do, would be a good experience for her. They said if we could fly her to Las Vegas and bring her here for a couple of months and meet with business people, Christian business people here that may be in our church or in the community, and some of y'all work in different kind of fields. where you can kind of help her to go shadow you, show her what you do, how you do it, how business works, and it would be a tremendous way to give exposure to her. There are some other girls that want to do other type of ministries, but for some reason, she's the one that stuck out. I thought she would fit really well with what we have in our church. And I said she could come and stay at my house if we do it. I didn't tell her any of this. She didn't know this, but it's something we're praying about, that maybe she can come and be a part of what we're doing. And some of y'all that are working in the business fields, you may say, we would be able to do that. Do the help the girls get in their own homes? Oh, let me see if I can read it. To help the girls get in their own homes so they have a sense of ownership of a new home. Okay, so you're saying, do they able to get into a new home? One of the things they're wanting to do, this is like a big dream of theirs. They're wanting to have what's called the City of Hope. And Ethnos would love to have the money available. And again, I told you how much it costs to buy a multi-million-dollar mansion. It doesn't cost much. There's a place there that I think used to be like a retreat center or resort. Not resorts like Lake Tahoe or anything. But they call it a resort. But it has a lot of little living areas, and they would like to be able to buy that and let these girls live there. It's walled, so there's a lot of security for them. They could pay the rent to have it. So they're working on something like that to see if maybe they could get that to where these girls, as they're transitioning, almost like a halfway house kind of thing, they come out of there. It's a safe place for them to live for a year or two so they can save money up, and then eventually go off and have their own home and have their own life. So that's really what they want to do, is get them to where they're self-sufficient. Are you going to post the links from your trip for the ministries you visited? Yes, the ministry, all you have to do if you want to look at it is Google Ethnos, E-T-H-N-O-S. It's a word that means nations. E-T-H-N-O-S, Ethnos Ministries, George, South Africa. I'll try and put that on our Facebook page. But you can do that, and it shows all the links to what their ministries are. Let's see. When they teach them the type of construction skills, are they teaching them to the extent so they can get licensed and or certified in their skill if required? Yes and no, because they're not have to be as licensed like we think of it. A lot of them can do more like day labor stuff, so they don't have to be quite as licensed and bonded and all that as we are. We're in South Africa. Were you always near the coast? Yes, I was right on the Indian Ocean the whole time. It's an area called the Garden Route. It runs from George, South Africa, all the way to Cape Town. It's kind of like we think of Highway 1 in California, but it's prettier. I know you go, how can it be prettier? It is. It's absolutely stunning. It's where all the people in Europe come to vacation. You see. The question is, are you thinking about maybe having this as a future mission trip? And is it safe enough to do a church-wide mission trip? It's extremely safe. Yes, we are thinking about doing that, but it's absolutely unbelievably safe. We were staying in a part of George that was really, really nice. Everybody speaks English, so you don't need translators or anything like that. I felt as safer than I do here in Las Vegas. So there's no danger at all. They don't drive near as crazy, so you don't have to worry about getting run over by a car like you do here. So they do drive on the wrong side of the road. But yes, it's extremely safe. And so we're doing that. Can you explain how Revelation 5:9 relates to your mission trip and missions in general? And with your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe and nation and people and nation. That is where it is, where Revelation 5:9 is a very incredible verse about how God redeemed people from every tribe and nation under the earth. And it really is, I will tell you, how do I put this? It wasn't a big shock to go there because of this church. Those of y'all who've been raised in Vegas, and those of y'all who've been in this church for a while, you don't understand how unusual this is. I'll give you an example. The last church I served in Alabama, we had over 1,200 members in my church. Every single one was white. No one was black, no Hispanics, no Asians. Not one out of 1,200. And nobody grew up in another country. If you grew up in another county, that was a big deal, okay? And so when I came here, this to me is a picture of Revelation 5:9. We have every color under the rainbow. We have people who were born in other countries. We have one that was born in Africa. There's many who are born in, she's my favorite African. I told TG, I met one woman from Ethiopia, and she's exactly like TG. It's like, does everybody act like you over there? But we have Asians. We have people who are from Central America, from Mexico, from everywhere in this congregation. And today, after the service is over, we have a church that's going to be worshiping in Farsi. One that will be in here worshiping in Spanish. Another one will be in there worshiping in Vietnamese. And another one will be worshiping as a Pakistani church. And so when I went over to South Africa, the church I went into last week, they had every color under the sun. And they had people from all over everywhere. And I was like, well, I'm home. You know, this is home. And it's a beautiful picture. And you go, why is it such a beautiful picture? You know why? Because it's going to be heaven. And what was wonderful about that, this is what I want to bring back to us, though, is that they were there reaching people of, different racial backgrounds and things like that, and meeting the needs of people to bring them to Jesus. And, I do hope it works out that maybe I can take a bunch of y'all over to South Africa and you can see it. But I also don't want us to get into the mentality that we have to go to South Africa to reach people who are in desperate need and need to know Jesus. We don't need to go to South Africa to find prostitutes. Okay? Y'all know that. We don't need to go to South Africa to find homeless people and drug addicts. We don't need to go to South Africa to find people who are being abused by their husbands and their fathers. All you need to do is walk out of your door, and they're here. And I will say that I know we're way over time, so if you need to leave, just leave. But I will tell you my burden, and this is one thing that God has been burdening me hard about Las Vegas and about Spring Valley. When I was in Alabama, I was in the town that I served as pastor. I was there for 24 years in that town, about 35,000 people. I knew everybody, and everybody knew me. I was very close friends with the mayor. I knew the city council. I knew all the businessmen. If I needed something, I knew who to call. And doing ministry there was very easy because I knew people. And if there were people in need, I knew I could call somebody and make that happen. I was very connected. I come here to Vegas, I don't know anybody. I'm not connected. It's also a very different town. Vegas is a different world. It just is. We have people from all over coming in and out. There's different needs here, and it's just different. And so one of the things I've been struggling with is how do we get outside the walls of Spring Valley and do effective, meaningful ministry? I don't want to do token ministry, guys. I don't want to go somewhere and do something for someone that makes us feel good about ourselves, and then we never see those people again. I want us to find ways to find what is our niche here in Las Vegas and meet that need and help people find Jesus and find a better life. And so I know y'all are probably going, well, you need to do that. Well, I haven't. And what I'm asking y'all is I bet some of y'all in this room go, some of y'all lived in Vegas your whole life. Some of y'all have things that need to be done. And I want us to be able to say, what can we do here? I will tell you one, I didn't even mean to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. And I know we're late, but like I said, if you don't want to listen, get up and leave. I won't get my feelings hurt. But, we have a lady here in our church named Shalonda. Shalonda helps foster children. That's what she works with. She's over that area working with foster children. A lot of foster families in Las Vegas and a lot of children needing foster homes. And one thing we did at my last church, which was a huge blessing, was we would have nights where foster families could bring their kids, their foster kids and their biological kids, and they could drop them off at the church, and we'd have big stuff for them while the parents got a night out. Because my family was a foster family, and it's a lot of work and a lot of stress, and they needed a night away. And I think one thing I've been praying about is, God, I think maybe you're drawing us to help be a blessing to foster families and foster work. So somebody praying up. But anyway, you can talk to me about stuff like that. I didn't mean to say that, and I know we're over time, so I need to get going. But thank y'all. It was a great trip, and again, I hope maybe we bring y'all. Next time, by the way, we won't take as long a flight, because what I found out was we took the cheapest flight you could find, which means you get the longest layovers they can possibly get. And I don't know if it was this service or last service, I said, if I never see the Zurich airport again, it will be a wonderful day. I've spent a total of 16 hours in the Zurich airport, and I never want to go in the airport again. So anyway, a couple of things before we leave. The announcements in your bulletin, I won't tell you those, but I'll tell you the ones that aren't in your bulletin. First of all, we need more candy for our fall festival that's coming up in 2 weeks. If you'd like to bring some of that, we're going to have that to reach out to families here in the community. We'd love for you to bring that. We need a lot of people to help. We need so much help running games or serving food or just all kinds of stuff. If you can help, please let us know. Let the church know. You can let Frank, our children's minister, know, or Tavane Rapp is helping with that, or you can just talk to me. One of our staff will help you out. Also, Pastor Mitch is doing better from his surgery. Friday, I asked him, I said, how is your breathing? He said, I'm breathing really, really well and much, much, much better than before the surgery. So he's seen a big difference in how he's doing. He's supposed to be watching the live stream, so I'm going to find out. If he didn't say that he heard y'all clapping for him, I know he didn't watch. So, the other thing is about Operation Christmas Child. We'll watch a video in a minute. We're taking up boxes. These are sent to all over the world, to the poorest people in the world. The children get this as a gift. When they get this, they and their families hear the gospel. It's part of Franklin Graham's ministry of Samaritan's Purse. He's the son of Billy Graham. We did this last year and collected almost 300 boxes, so we're starting to take those in. If you'd rather not build a box, they have a new thing this year in your bulletins. There's a QR code. You can donate to Samaritan's Purse, and they will build the box for you if you'd rather not build a box. So, and our church will be credited with that in the total count. I also told you before I left for South Africa that we're going to take a group over to Fullerton, California, to the processing center for this. All the boxes from the whole West Coast, all through Colorado, Utah, and West, everything goes to Fullerton, California, millions of these boxes, and they need volunteers who will go through them, make sure everything's okay, inspect the boxes, then they package them, pallet them, and they get ready to send all over the world. So we're going to take a group over. I can only take a certain number of people. And the dates are going to be November the 28th and 29th. It's a Monday and a Tuesday after Thanksgiving. The cost, I'm going to let you know the cost next week. I'm trying to get the best hotels. It'll be for your hotel, and you'll have to pay for your food. So everything else will be taken care of. So if you'd like to go, again, the numbers are going to be very limited in how many we can take, but if you got us signed up for those times, we'll work Monday night. We'll drive over Monday, work Monday night, spend the night, get up, work Tuesday afternoon and drive home. So we're back on Tuesday night. Hope that made sense. And last thing, my Thursday night Bible study, we suspended it. We ended a study, then we suspended it for 3 weeks because I was gone. I will start my Thursday night Bible study back up this Thursday at 6:30, right there in that room to my left, and I will be going verse by verse through the book of Revelation. So if you'd like to come and be a part of that, you can. I've got some technical things worked out, so I should be able to video this one and have it on my YouTube channel. So if you don't get to come, it should be on there. All right, let's watch a quick video about Operation Christmas Child, then we'll pray and we'll head out.
3, 2, 1.
Those lids come off those boxes. You've never seen such pure joy.
This is amazing. As you can see, the children's faces, they're excited as they open up the gifts for the first time.
What makes the gifts more than just gifts is the message that comes with the gift.
This is the opportunity for a child to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ.
The mission of Operation Christmas Child never changes. Children are coming to Jesus, and children are taking the gospel to the ends of the earth.
Millions of children around the world are being impacted by these simple shoebox gifts. One box can touch not just a child, but the whole family. So we need to keep packing those boxes and pray for the children that God will use this in a very special way. So thank you for being a part of it. God bless you.
And if you're not sure what to do with the boxes, we have those out in the back. You could get them, they're flat, so you have to kind of fold them, put them together. There's information, I think, in the back, or at least on the website, that says what you can and cannot pack for different age children, so you can look at that. And if you have any questions, just ask me or one of our folks out there. We'll be happy to talk to you about it, okay? Let's stand. We're going to have a word of prayer, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. Thank you so much again for those of y'all who donated so much stuff to help these people. It made a huge difference. Father, I love you. I thank you for those great people that you allowed me to meet there in South Africa, and I pray you'll be with them each and every day, and I pray you'll continue to help Ethnos to rescue more and more of these people out of poverty so that they can have a better life here, but more importantly, they can hear about an eternal life they can have with you. God, thank you for this amazing church and their generosity and the way they did so much to care for these people that they'll probably never meet in this lifetime. But they did this so that they could hear the gospel and they could have a better life. And thank you so much for the support that they showed when I told them about the van. I know that's going to make a big difference, and I thank you that we have the ability to do that because you blessed us so much. Lord, whatever you want us to do here in Las Vegas, I pray you'll make that very clear, that it will be what you want for our church, that it will make a difference in this community, and most importantly, that people will hear about Jesus because of it. Thank you for loving us. Thank you so much for the glorious gift of salvation and eternal life. And Lord, thank you for the blessings we have in this world. Every time I go to these places, I realize how much we take for granted the simple things we have and the blessings we have in this wonderful country. Thank you for that. We love you. I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.